If you have a container garden, you are probably hand watering every single pot, sometimes twice a day in summer, and still finding that some plants are too wet and some are too dry. There is a system that changes this entirely. Stacey Murphy explains the self-watering container approach, from the simple wine bottle pressure equalization trick to full sub-irrigated planters that barely need watering at all.
When the soil is moist enough and it can't take up any more water, that will exert pressure onto the bottle of water, and the water will no longer be able to flow out into that soil. But as that potting mix starts to dry out, that water will start to seep in because the pressure will change, essentially. So it's a really cool sciencey, geeky thing for this equalized pressure to work. And
this Q&A was recorded at a past Grow Your Own Vegetables event, where Stacey Murphy explains the self-watering systems that let your containers water themselves, and the critical potting mix mistake most container gardeners make. For more information, free resources, and gentle guidance, you can find us at growyourownvegetables.org. And to grow alongside other gardeners just like you, join our free community at gyov.org.
One of the things that you want to perhaps think about is this idea of self-watering. And I have self-watering in quotes because it's not like somebody's watering this or they're watering themselves. You actually are still putting water in the plant, but you're doing it in a way that allows the plant to take as much water as it needs to conserve water and for you not to have to water it all the time. So in this picture are 2 tomato plants in 5-gallon buckets. And this is a really simple system. They basically took wine bottles and filled them with water and stuck them upside down into the bucket. And what happens is that, this is really cool, when the soil is moist enough and it can't take up any more water, that will exert pressure onto the bottle of water, and the water will no longer be able to flow out into that soil. But as that potting mix starts to dry out, that water will start to seep in because the pressure will change, essentially.
This is one of the most elegant, small-scale irrigation systems in gardening. It costs nothing. It uses whatever bottles you have, and the physics does all the work for you.
So it's a really cool sciencey, geeky thing for this equalized pressure to work. And the way that this has to work, and you have to be conscious of a couple things. You want to make sure that your potting mix is hydrophilic. This might be a new word for people. So if you look at the word, hydro means water, philic means loving. So when you go to plant your plants into containers, what you want to do first, potting mix can be very dry. And so what you want to do is mix up that potting mix with water. We talked about this during propagation. You always want to make sure that that potting mix is moist. Otherwise, what will happen is it's what's called hydrophobic, which means that it's afraid of water. And every time that it gets watered, the water doesn't actually seep into the crevices in that potting mix. It actually just moves away from all of the potting mix. And the potting mix, it's like dry. It stays, what's the word for it? It kind of floats on the water, and the water just evaporates. And so you don't want that scenario. So you want to make sure that you add water to your potting mix. Make sure it's moist. You don't want it wet. You don't want it to the point where when you squeeze it, water comes out, but you want it nice and moist. Then what you do is you plant your plant, you fill up your wine bottle or whatever bottle you have with water, and you put your thumb over the top of it, and you flip it over and you kind of shove it down into the soil before all the water comes rushing out. And then eventually it will balance out. The pressure will balance out. You'll see that the water line is not dropping on that bottle, and that you'll know that it's right.
This single step prevents the most common failure with self-watering containers. A dry sponge repels water. It takes time and pressure to get water into it. Pre-moisten the potting mix first, and the whole system works perfectly.
The way that you'll know it's wrong is if that bottle all the water starts flowing out of the bottle, and your plant starts floating up in space. And that's how you know that the water is just like pouring out and it's not going into that potting mix. I've had that happen. Okay, so other types of containers that you might use are pallets. A lot of people have these around town. They find them. It's a good place to repurpose something. It's natural wood, which is nice. It's not plastic, so it's a reuse of a natural material, which is beneficial. The trick with pallets, I love pallets. I absolutely love them. I think they're beautiful. I think that they're, you have a place to write on the side of this pallet, even, putting in maybe a painting of chalkboard and write on there what's planted and when. It's a really beautiful opportunity to have this pallet. I wouldn't paint it a color necessarily. It might be a little toxic. So you have this beautiful canvas to work with. The challenge with planting in a planter is that when you put the soil in, and you basically have to put in ledges into that pallet so that the plants sit on something and that they hold soil or potting mix and water. When you do that, now it's hard to water. Imagine watering the pallet on the right and trying to water just the soil, because oftentimes it's what you're trying to do is water the soil, not the plant, right? And so to try to water this is a little challenging. So I recommend if you are doing a planter inside of a pallet like this, that you think about tipping it these are almost vertical. If you can tip it just a little bit more, you might be able to get inside there a little bit easier. Or you might need just a long spout watering can, something with a thin neck that will get in between those crevices and not waste a lot of water. So these pallets are basically, each level of this is a different growing zone. So keep that in mind. So each one of them needs to be watered.
This is the system Stacey used on a public community garden project where she was never on site. Volunteers filled the reservoir once a week. The plants watered themselves in between. For anyone with a balcony who travels or works long hours, this is the system.
So that's how these particular ones work. Some people have rigged these to be hydroponic, where the water drips through all levels, and I'll show you something like that in a minute. But for the most part, the easiest way to build a pallet garden is to put in pieces of wood that make little shelves in there. You put in your potting mix, you put in your plants, and the plants grow out through the sides. So that's the typical way to do this, and it works pretty well. The image on the left, I would say those people, the image on the right are doing really great. They have really healthy looking plants. The person on the left has a little bit of unhealthy plants. They have some lettuce, red lettuce that's bolting. They have some pretty leggy plants that are falling over, and that could be because they're using too much fertilizer. We'll talk about this in just a minute, about some of the challenges. So here is my container garden about halfway through the season. And so those same planters that you saw are now buried. You can't even see the containers. And basically the plants are just kind of cascading out over the top. And so in this area, just to give you a sense of what's here, the upper bins are in the blue are two containers that are pretty similar. They both have hot peppers in them, one plant each, because they're pretty small containers. They're like 1.5 feet long, I would say, by about 6 to 8 inches wide. And so they have one pepper plant in the center, and then they have 2 herbs on the side of the plant. Each one of them has a thyme plant, and each one of them has a sage plant on the other side. So those are some of my herbs. Below that, there is a whole bunch of holy basil, just because it's one of my favorite crops. They grow a lot of pesto, so those containers are all Tulsi basil on the right-hand side of the screen. And then you see my containers. There's nasturtium. Those red flowers are falling out in those like lily pad leaves. That's nasturtium. Those are great for salad, spicy. And then you see really tall is some eggplant and some pepper plants sticking out, and then it's really hard to tell what else is there. And basically all my arugula and braising greens are all kind of buried in there. And so what I do is I do a lot of things that I can cut, and then they come again. And I clean this out completely, make it really clean, and then everything grows back in lush again. And so just to give you a sense of this container garden, this is, I would say, from the right-hand side of the screen to the left-hand side of the screen is about 10 feet maybe, and that ledge is about a foot deep. And the upper ledge, you see there the 2 blue containers, and then there's another 3 containers to the right of that where I was growing some callaloo. And in total, this area, I basically was watering 1 gallon a day of water when the temperature was below 85, and I was watering about 2 gallons per day when it was above 85. And I would water in the early morning before the sun came out, and then, or if I missed the early morning, I would do after the sun went down. This particular area was a really interesting area. It got early morning light, then it went into shade about midday, which was cool, like right at the peak sun when it was really, really hot. It went into a little bit of shade, and then it basically went back into sun, and so it got, I would say a good between 8 and 10 hours of sun a day, but it missed the peak hours, which was kind of cool, and so it really grew well. And there were some days it got above 85, and it did require more water on those days. And then some of the maintenance that I did on this area is I removed a couple diseased leaves here and there. Not too much disease, though, for this container garden. It was pretty incredible. And if you need liquid fish or liquid kelp, you can apply it. Some people say they apply it every 2 weeks to their container gardens. What I did is I grew with a mixture of potting mixes, this Happy Frog stuff that had some mycorrhizae fungus and a little bit of seaweed compost in it, and I never fertilized it all season long. And the only thing that I would say that could have used a little bit of fertilizer, my Asian eggplant, it was prolific. It grew so many eggplants. And on the farm, on my other farm, the same type of Asian eggplant, same variety, was growing eggplants that were about maybe 8 to 9 inches long, and they were growing between 4 to 6 inches long, but they were pretty abundant, so I was not complaining at all. And then you want to be ready for any supports if needed. I thought about propping up my eggplant at one point. It was starting to fall over, but it turned out it was not hurting the plant at all as long as I was cutting off the eggplant, and so I ended up with no props. Like I said, my hot peppers did collapse once because of lack of water, and they perked right back up. I thought about propping them up after I watered, but they perked back up and I never needed a support. So those are some of the maintenance things that you might need to do throughout the season. One other thing I did is I periodically checked to make sure that the top of the soil wasn't crunchy at all, because if it's crunchy on top, then the water is not really soaking in. And so, like I said before, you want to make sure that that potting mix is always accepting the water, and that it's not just, let's say your potting mix becomes hydrophobic. What happens sometimes is that all the potting mix will be in the center of the container, and there'll be like a crack around the edge. And when you pour water in, all the water will go down the sides and out the bottom, and it won't actually water the plant, or the potting mix in the pot. So try to make sure that your water is actually soaking in each time.
Hand watering every container every day is over. A wine bottle upside down in pre-moistened soil delivers water exactly when the plant needs it and stops when it does not. A sub-irrigated planter with a bottom reservoir takes this further. Fill it once, and the plant manages its own water supply for days. Pre-moisten the potting mix. Watch the soil surface. Water morning or evening, not at peak sun. Your containers just became self-sufficient. You are not the gardener who hand waters every pot twice a day anymore. You are the one who pre-moistens the mix, who sets up the wine bottle system, who builds the sub-irrigated planter and fills the reservoir once a week. If you want to keep learning from Stacey Murphy, there is a whole community of gardeners growing extraordinary food, completely free at growyourownvegetables.org.